let's take a look at how to make our beautiful mermaids. So if you have the mermaid printed kit, you may have Shinju or you could have Shui. So today I think we'll make Shinju. You'll also have your Wabi-Sabi label, which if you want to, you can include in the seam, but that's optional. So let's take a look at how to make Shinju. When you unpack your Wabi-Sabi kit, you may want to press your cotton poplin sheet so there are no creases. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cut out my doll shapes, and I'm going to cut on the dotted line here, so all the way around each shape. So I'll go ahead and cut out my shapes. Just cut very carefully, directly on top of the dotted line. I've gone ahead and cut out all the parts for Shinju. So we have the mermaid's tail, the body, the head, and we have 2 sets of arms. You can see in very, or you may not be able to see, but on your kit you'll see in very faint writing, leave open here on the arms, so that you know to leave open. And we have some marks on the base of the head shapes to say leave open, and also at the neck. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and we also have leave open here at the side of the mermaid's tail. So the first thing I'm going to do is attach the body to the tail for both the front and the back. So you can decide which you prefer for the front or the back. For the mermaid's tail, they're exactly the same. And you can decide which you want for the front of the body and the back of the body. I like the Wabi-Sabi on the back. So I'm going to attach the tail to the body. So I'll be stitching from the edge there all the way around to the edge. And the same with this piece, stitching all the way. So make sure they match at the edge, begin stitching and then pivot round to the edge. So the body to the tail. While I'm at the machine, I can pop the stitching onto the head shape. So you can see we have leave open here and leave open here. I want to match those up. So I'm going to put the right sides together and make sure that those markings are perfectly aligned. And I'm going to stitch all the way around the head, leaving the gap here. So all the way around from here to where the marker is. With the arms, I'm going to again put right sides together. I'm sure you have the idea by now. I'm going to stitch all the way around and just leave this gap. And the same for this arm. So I'm going to head over to the machine and stitch the doll shapes this far. I'm going to first of all sew the body to the tail. So we need to make sure that where our centimetre seam allowance is, intersect on the side of the seam there. And then we're going to slowly pivot this round until we come to the edge. So just pop the other parts away. Just sew a millimetre or fractionally within the colour of the tail. Gently turn the edges of the fabric to meet. Back tack at the end. So we've attached the tail to the body, and I've already gone ahead and attached the tail to the body on the other side. We can then pop these right sides together, and if you want to pop your label in with the logo facing downwards, you can put the label in at this point if you like and sandwich it in the seam. So pop the right sides together for the body. Make sure that you match up the seam lines here, and the only place we're going to leave open is here, and the neck as well, so the neck's going to be left open. So I'm going to start from the top of the neck here, and I'm sewing down the neck here and following the shape of the body, and just double check that those seams match there. Very carefully, making sure you get the shape of the body. And make sure that the seam allowances are facing upwards when you sew over here. I'm going to stop here because this is on my leave open. Oh, let me just check. No, it's not quite on the leave open section. That's here, so I will carry on. And then when I get to my leave open mark, which I can just about see through the fabric, I'm just going to back tack and stop. And then sew, make sure you match marks together, and then continue around. Again, make sure that these match and that the seam allowances are facing up. And so straight up at the neck, making a funnel and back tack. I'm going to sew around the head, again making a funnel. And finally the arms, remembering to leave the gap. I've already stitched one arm, so I'm just completing the pair. Now I've stitched my mermaid doll, I need to turn her through. Before turning through, I just need to clip into some of the seams. So it's a good idea to clip in here into the neck and just trim down any excess seam allowance. So just go around and trim down, but leave the extra seam allowance at the neckline. So I'm going to travel around and trim down the extra. With the arms, I'm just going to snip in at the leave open section. So just snip in here and snip in here and go around and trim down everywhere apart from the sections that you've left open. Leave them with the extra seam allowance because it helps you when you tuck that in and hand stitch. So you give yourself a lip. And you'll turn them through. You'll need to snip in at the waist here and a couple of times at the neck, just to allow those curves to turn through. Also here, a couple of times at the curvature of the tail. Don't snip in at the leave open section. You will need to snip in at the base of the tail here on the side of the tail. You have lines on the major places on the pattern sheet, and again go around and trim down the seam allowance so that you reduce the bulk, but leave the lip in the area where you're going to turn it through. So just trim down. So now it's time to turn through the main body. And the smaller your hands and the smaller your fingers, the easier this is. And I find that a pen with a rounded edge is really handy to just get in place of fingers and just push those edges out. Use your fingers to roll the edges of the seams out, and the warmth of your fingers to just roll the seam and make sure that the seam is right to the edge and there are no creases. And crease where you have your leave open just on the edge of the seam line. Again, I can use my pen to just get the neck funnel here and just push out the shape of the mermaid. So here we have the head to turn through. The arms of the same principle as the body. The head is pretty difficult to turn through, and if you find it too difficult, you might want to just leave the top of the head open, not stitch all the way around, and then hand stitch that after. But I think the easiest way to do this is to start it off and just bit by bit, but it's a very, very tiny neckline, and bit by bit pull through and you see the colour start to pull it through the hole. This part of it does take patience, and once it starts to come through, it's not so bad. And you start to get a little bit more to drag on, but it does take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. You'll find once you get it through a little way and it starts to come, then the process begins to speed up. There you go. So again, with your fingers, once you have the head turned through, just roll the edges. So that you get the seam to the edge. So I'll go ahead and carry on and turn through the arm, and the next stage will be to apply the stuffing to our mermaid. Having turned through all the parts of our mermaid, we're now ready to apply the filling. So take small pieces of filling and using your gaps. And I always find again my invisible marker pen with a rounded edge. Apply the filling into the smaller areas first, so small pieces work best, and just pop them up. You can use your fingers or an implement with a rounded edge. And these invisible marker pens happen to work really well. And then down into the small parts of the tail. And all the time roll the seams out and use your fingers to shape them. So once I've filled the extremities, I'll go ahead and fill the main cavity until I'm happy with it. The same with the arms, so take small pieces at first and pop them right up into the top and the bottom, and then fill the main cavity after. The head is pretty tricky again to sew, so if you're finding it tricky, use the technique where you leave the top of the head open and fill from there, and then hand stitch the head closed. But I'm going to make it really difficult for myself and fill the head through this tiny gap. So I'm just going to tuck the seam allowance in and just clear that. And apply small pieces again into the head and just gently stuff or fill until you're happy with the quantity of filling. I've got the mermaid Shinju to the stage where I'm happy with the quantity of filling. I filled the arms and just tucked in the seam allowance there, and on the creases of the seam allowance I've just held that together with some clips. So I need to hand stitch these gaps closed. I also need to hand stitch the gap closed here. I also need to go ahead and join the head to the body. Now the easiest way to do this is just to use your blunt instrument and just make a bit of a hole there. And I've got plenty of filling in the neck, so it's pretty stiff, and I will just gently insert, and sometimes it works well if you just crease that over a little bit so that you can get that right inside there. And when I'm happy with that, and that neck is attached, and I've pushed a lot of the filling up to the top so I can pull that back down after, and that can be hand stitched on. So I need to go ahead now and hand stitch the gaps, and then I will hand stitch the head to the body. So taking my needle and thread, I'll just show you the steps for hand stitching the head to the body. If you just go in at the side of the face here, and just pull through, what you want to aim to do is to drag the head down a little bit onto the body so that you're shortening the neck. So when you're happy with it, squeeze together and just take tiny stitches and go all the way around. And stitch around the circumference there. And stitch the head to the neck. I'm at the stage here where I've hand stitched the arms closed, the head is attached to the body. I've just hand stitched some of the gap closed here, but left a small opening. The reason is that I need the shoulders to be really solid and well packed, so I need to just be able to get in and make sure that the filling is right up into the shoulders for attaching the arms, and it's fairly solid there. So I'm using just a regular hand sewing needle, regular thread. You can use a longer needle and embroidery thread if you like. I'm going to pass my needle through the body and out the other side. And I want to just come out on the seam there. So the longer the needle you have, the better. Just makes it easier. I want to leave a tail here, so just leave that tail. So I'm going to attach the arm here at the top, sew through, just take a small stitch, make sure that you don't pull this tail through. So I'm just going to hold that tail with my thumb, get the arm how I want it, just take a small stitch at the top here and go through the body in the same place that you came out, and then aim to come out where you have the stitching. So you may need to kind of push down on the needle if your needle's fairly short like mine, and then pull that. So I have that arm as attached as I need it to the body. So what I'm going to do now is just take these threads, pull them, and make a couple of knots here, so that that arm is nice and secure. 3 or 4 knots, just to be on the safe side. And I can snip that close. So it just helps now that I can kind of go in and make sure that I'm very solid up there and that I'm not collapsing the chest there. So the next arm, I'm just going to go through the arm here at the top, take a small stitch back through, through the arm and then out the other side, as close to the area that you originally, not close enough there. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries. There you go, perfect. And through. And so we have both arms attached now. So it's just a case now, backwards and forwards through the arms to attach them to the body until you feel that they're secure enough. And while you're doing that, you still have your body cavity open so that you can kind of manipulate the stuffing and shape, make sure everything's shaped nicely as you go through and you're not collapsing. It does need to be pretty solid up here. Another time. And when I'm happy that the arms are secure enough and happy with the shape, just make an extra little stitch here just to tie this off, just to secure the arm. So a couple of tiny stitches there just to secure that. So our arms here are movable, we can move them up and down. So all that's left to do now is to just make sure that we're happy with the shape and that everything's lying nicely and the stuffing is where we want it. And we can just go ahead and hand stitch the remaining gap closed with a very small stitch. So here we have Shinju finished. We just turn her over and you can look. And we have the arms that move up and down.